Hello, good morning everybody, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Chris Bridges from PFP, and delighted to be joined today by CEO of GovGrant, Luke Hamm. Morning, Luke.
Morning, Chris.
Thanks very much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Thank you all for attending. The purpose of today's webinar is to introduce a platform and a product that our professional partners at GovGrant have brought out to the accountancy marketplace that we're really excited about. And the best thing about it is, as you'll see, it's really looking at the space around R&D. Over the last couple of years has become very crowded, and it's really making sure we're doing our bit to make sure that's a compliant marketplace and making sure people are able to produce the best R&D reports possible. Now, please ask any questions as we go throughout the webinar. There's a questions tab as we go. But what we would like to do, just to kick off, just to gauge what people are doing, is just run a couple of quick polls. So if everybody would very kindly just have a quick look at the poll coming up on the screen, and if you could quickly answer that in what you're doing around currently working with R&D and what you do for your clients. Okay, we'll close that there. So that's quite interesting. We've got about 30% do some R&D in-house, Luke, 16% cover everything off, and 25% looking at use a third party for everything. And we've got 20% that would be interested in claiming but don't do anything currently. So that's quite interesting there. Just another quick one, just to see what people's views are about the marketplace. So let's quickly launch this poll for everybody. So it's, what's your opinion of R&D tax specialists and boutiques? What do you guys think of the people out there that offer R&D services? Right, we'll close that there. Again, that's quite interesting. So we've got just under 60% think that, you know, the likes of PFP and GovGrant have a place. 25%, almost a quarter of you, think they're extremely low quality and aggressive sales machines, which is quite interesting. I think we'll leave the polls there to start with, Luke, but I think that gives us a fairly good flavour of what the perception is out there. And Luke, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and we'll start as we go through. And as I said, please, any questions, feel free to answer as we go. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you everyone for your feedback on the questions. And it's I have to sadly agree with a quarter of you that the market is becoming relatively aggressive sales techniques, and the quality and the purpose of the scheme is moving away. Very quickly on me, I'm Luke Hamm, Chief Exec here at GovGrant. We, over the past couple of years, have continued to try and partner and support the accountancy world to make sure that this does become something that most accountants can speak to their clients about, as we say, empower accountants to have the innovation conversation. And what I wanted to run through today is, what's the problem we're trying to address? So Elevation is a new solution that we launched this month, and I'll go through in a bit more detail. But why have we done this? Why has an R&D provider who has most of its money from R&D trying to get out to accountants, say, can you do some of it, please? Because there is a problem we need to solve. And then I'll run through Elevation in a little bit more detail. So past 12-18 months, which I'll just give a quick 60-second view on, HMRC, as you've probably been seeing, not just in R&D but outside of that, there is definitely a change of mood, and we are starting to see questions and inquiries from HMRC that are actually quite welcome. You know, we are not, as we all know, investigations can be useful things to test parts of the legislation and the interpretations of it. We know, and we have seen awful behaviour from some of our competitors, people who are benefiting from R&D who quite frankly shouldn't be. And HMRC are very aware of this and are going for certain things. And I'll talk particularly overseas costs. There's no UK employees. The UK company looks like a shell. The technical reports are pretty poor, i.e. this was really hard, give me 100 grand. That's not really cutting the mustard now, which is good to see. Agents, there is definitely a role around what agents should be doing and where the role of regulation plays. The last consultation from HMRC asked specifically around the role of agents and how do we create a better environment for advice around R&D, but also a little bit around patent box. And you know, the main question, this is a cost line, this is an investment line from the government, and are they getting the money they need to out of it? The last rounds of economic analysis focuses very much on the spillover effect and the additionality factor, two economic measures that are, one, very difficult to track through, but are the most significant payback for R&D, and it's effectively looking at the 5-10 year payback into wider economic metrics, not just do they earn more money, but did it create more jobs? Does it create a better supply chain? Do you have higher skilled roles being accessible to UK residents as opposed to overseas? There is a huge amount of support for the scheme still. R&D tax, patent box, question mark, but we'll talk mainly about R&D tax today. It's, you know, Boris is talking 11 up, Build Back Better, scientific superhouse, powerhouse, lots of good positive noises around R&D. So the R&D agenda is not going away. It's a positive place to be, and COVID has proven that actually there is a bigger commitment to this now. This is a lever that the government wants to pull and push. So hence the reason why making sure that as many businesses have access and knowledge through their most trusted advisor, the accountant, is absolutely top of mind. And of course, we've started to see now some impact of COVID in what's going on in their businesses. I'm sure you've seen it in a lot more detail, but from an R&D lens, the impact of furlough costs, the impact of people who have closed down, some of the positive pivots, but some also the challenges that people have seen and how that's going to run through. So what's the current solutions? I use the phrase disruptor or distraction. Everyone kind of thinks that as soon as we do something to do with software, we'll call ourselves some form of funky disruptor who's going to change the game. Okay, we'll leave you to one side. What effectively the solutions are at the moment are online web-based forms. The biggest question that we have from accountants, and we'll talk about it later, is yes, but what's qualifying? Are you pushing the envelope? What are reasonable costs to attach? And what these have gone from is away from, you know, let's digitalize Word documents and Excel spreadsheets. Good step forward, but it's not really done too much more than that. There's some linkages towards Xero, QuickBooks, all good stuff, but again, is it just pointing to information versus trying to qualify what's in, out, how can it bend, what does it need to look like? And sadly, it's a very low barrier. There's, because R&D and, you know, wider parts of tax aren't regulated as hard as it should be, the ability for a new startup who wants to set up a website, online form, and say, I'm doing R&D, there's not too much that gets in the way. So there's a few messages. Is price the problem? You know, you see these, you know, 25% of you saying it's a bit messy, this market. 30 minutes gets hundreds of thousands back for your clients. Now, that I feel is an absolute insult to government spend. If you can spend 30 minutes of no one's time is worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. Now, if you're spending 30 minutes of time going to ask an investor for hundreds of thousands of pounds, you wouldn't do it. And would you pay your advisor £249 for it? Probably not. So is price the problem, or is that just a tactic? Process. R&D can be time consuming. Let's not get away from that. It can be time consuming, but it depends on what the structure of the business is. Is it a multi-site manufacturing business? Is it a high-level software business within a group? And there's lots of different cost charges we need to think about. So what process problem are we trying to fix? Or is it around the appropriateness of approaches? As the knowledge of R&D and what is qualifying is what has got better, and there's lots of good information out there about what it means, there is an element of making sure that the process is suitable based on the client profile. That's a process point I can buy into. If an online form solves that, I'm not sure. And then knowledge, the point I just touched upon. Is it demystifying this voodoo that is R&D? That's not the case. I've been with GovGrant now for 4.5 years, and I think in that time period, in that short time period, there's very much a change of messaging away from have you ever heard of, this is an opportunity that you should have a look at, to is it compliant, is it maximized. That probably indicates to me that some of those basic questions, when you Google an answer and say, right, what is this, people are being able to self-service what the knowledge is. Some of the language is difficult, and of course some of those initial barriers about what does it mean, how does it play, what are the other options, is a conversation that a professional advisor needs to have. Just following the top click on Google who someone's paid for is probably not the way forward. There is still a depth of knowledge that we need to think about. So buyer beware is our message. I can be relatively aggressive sometimes with my language around some of the practices and the solutions that are out there right now, and I think I'm well placed to, because we are seeing an increasing move towards a lack of compliance, and it's dangerous. It's absolutely dangerous, because the vast majority of claims are absolutely valid, are critical to cash flow, and are meaningful. And we are getting to the point where if these solutions start to take off and get deployed in the wrong place, you have got lots of different issues coming. Is there mis-selling risk? Is there compliance risk? Is there just an optics risk of R&D? 25% R&D is a little bit messy here, and it's the aggressive PPI type salespeople. So we don't really need to associate that towards one of the largest R&D government spends in the budget. If we think the government has pledged 22 billion towards the R&D agenda, 5-6 billion is earmarked for R&D tax. It's the single largest line item when it comes to the industrial strategy R&D spend. Do we want that to be tarnished with PPI? Probably not. Tech has a role to play. I am a big fan, and you will see what we've done to try and solve this. But tech is tech. It's not the silver bullet. Do you create those efficiencies? The things that are useful, concerns that accountants always speak to us about is, how do I identify that it's right? Are they fair and reasonable? How do I make this engaging for our clients? And can I control the management of clients? Whether it be, a number of you said that you partner with third parties. Do you have enough good information and good sight of where is that client in the process? We always know that a personal recommendation is hugely valuable, because you're putting your personal stamp on, look, you should go and speak to these guys. And that's not just for R&D, with anything. That's a great restaurant, you should go there. If they have a terrible experience, you feel a little bit like, oh, well, we had a brilliant experience. That personal recommendation has a different level. And what our accountants, the feedback we have consistently is, I want to know what's going on with my clients. I've said you guys are good and you will look after them, and they've not moved forward, or there's a challenge. You want that information at the tip of your finger, and tech can solve some of that. But the number one challenge is the scope of R&D. Who can qualify? And for us, this is most relevant for the smaller end of the of client, and how you define smaller end of the client is why I hesitated. We think about it in terms of qualifying expenditure for obvious reasons, but when you think about someone who might be a few people, not a significantly high P&L cost, but are probably potentially touching R&D, but actually to engage with them, there's going to be too many cost barriers and complexity. So can we try and get access for those people, and how do you do it? So a few things, data science is something we hear about every single day. We're fortunate enough that we've got data of 8,500 claims. So can we model that, and not to give the game away for the end of the slides, can we model that to give some answers around how we give access to those smaller businesses and build those stronger links, that that compliance, and I trust you, I can see what you're doing, the claims you make are good, solid, they're absolutely maximized. We should be brave with the claims we make. They should absolutely, clients should benefit from every single penny that's on offer if it's an investment, but it needs to be appropriate, and it needs to be absolutely 100% compliant. What do your clients need and the market need? So the phrase that I keep using is, we need more sheriffs in the Wild West. PPI, this is PPI territory. I'm really sorry to confirm that point, but we see, and COVID has accelerated this, we have seen new startups almost every Monday for the past 12 months. We've seen rip-offs of our website, literal rip-offs of our website, with exactly the same wording to try and get those people there. And what we need to have is more good people, more sheriffs, and accountants have definitely got an opportunity to be those sheriffs to make sure that the cowboys that are sadly operating, calling your clients daily. We did a piece of third-party research to clients' prospects, and a common number that was repeatedly said was FDs are being called between 8 and 10 times a week by R&D providers. That wasn't one or two people mentioning that. That was 10, yeah, tens. I think we interviewed about 140, and you were talking 40 to 50 of those people commented that they had 8 to 10 calls every single week around R&D, and that they're losing money and they could be doing something more. And accountants can definitely stand in the way of that bad behaviour. So from our perspective,
Luke, just on that point, if you don't mind, I mean, Luke, I know it's something that you feel very strongly about, and we've certainly seen, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, you know, the pandemic in the last 18, 20 months has certainly accelerated these pop-ups, honestly, you said almost every Monday. But at PFP, we work with thousands of accountants. Every week we're talking to our accountants. And what we actually find is that if you as the accountant are not talking to your clients, and a really good point you made, Luke, is, you know, FDs, business owners, it's almost that PPI scale of the amount of phone calls that they're getting, almost that sort of harassment stage. So if you're not talking and engaging with your clients about R&D, then somebody else will be. I think it's quite a strong message out there. I think it's worth taking on board, Luke.
Absolutely, and that's the challenge. So why are we here? Why are we doing this presentation? Why have we released Elevation? And it's exactly for this. We need to give you the tools to make sure that you are the people they go to, but also your entire team feel confident in the conversation. I've touched on most of these points already. The sector, size of business and size of claim are the most. The intent of the scheme is the thing that's getting missed right now. The reason why this bad behavior is coming in is because people have heard free cash here too often, and what they need to reflect upon, and we need to really push that message of this is government investment. Do not think it as a tax break. Do not think about it as a mitigation tactic. They might be things, but the intent of the scheme is investment in the industrial strategy. So Elevation, this is what we wanted to do. This was right. We are one of the largest players in this market. We need to get involved to make sure that we start addressing some of these things in a really positive, focused way, and using technology, not in a way that is we're a funky disruptor tech business, because it might add to the value of the business. Not interested in that in a slightest. We want to make sure that we've given the accountancy community the right tools, the right assets to have the innovation conversation. It's about trust and transparency, and we have given this free of charge. You will see these tech solutions coming out where it's a per license, per seat license, or per report cost. Elevation is free of charge for our accounting partners, and I'll just walk through what Elevation is. It's made up of 3 parts. Elevation is foundations, platform, and blueprint. Foundations is the point I talked about around the transparency and where are you with my clients. So accountants, as the poll said, exactly as expected, some people will do all, some will dip in, some will use a third party, depending on size of client, complexity of client, type of R&D. So you want to be able to see, when I've given it to someone else, where am I with it? What does it look like? Because this client needs to still, it's still my client, and they still need to feel that relationship that you've built with them over a period of time. So a foundation gives you direct access in live real time to all the clients that you've introduced to Gov Grants for us to go and do the work and give you exactly what's going on. You've got overview dashboards to say there's 10 clients, some have filed, the value's been X. If you're earning an introductory fee off of it, this is how much you've earned as a practice or as an individual from it. And then at an individual client level, you can see and drill down to here's my into all my clients, and this is where exactly single person is. It also gives you a quick, easy reference contact point. So who is the technical specialist speaking to that client? Who is the tax manager if it's a complex case who's going to review this? Who's the salesperson who went and engaged with my client? You see exact everything. There is nothing we are hiding here to make sure that you feel as engaged in what we're doing as if we were sitting in your office or in your digital offices now, to see what we're doing. It's important. We've invested significantly to create that back office system and that front end to give accountants that focus. Blueprint is the thing that will develop over particularly the next 2 to 3 months. We talked about the content. There's lots and lots of really good content out there, and we try and really put a lot of content out there around what this is all about. We did a report with the CBI last month called Prosperity Pending, which was all around the impact of intellectual property and as a value lever for businesses. But this will take it to the next step. This is gated CPD accredited content that will educate and inform accountants the next level up, as opposed to the freebie information you might be able to find out there about R&D. I mentioned IP, but not too much, but intellectual property is a key one. Intellectual property is getting absolutely intrinsically linked to the industrial strategy around R&D. They need to sit together for obvious reasons. And this will provide that content in a format that is useful, CPD accredited and trackable. And there's also marketing support. So for our partners, there's approved content that you can put on your website. There might be emails that you want to go out to your clients to say, this is what we're seeing in the market. You've probably had 12 calls. Would you like us to review what you're doing? If you do it in-house, fine. If you do it with us, great. Lots of different opportunities to see this, because at the end of the day, there is a huge client benefit to do with R&D, but there's just as much benefit for an accountant and a professional advisor to be involved, because it is still difficult. There are still hurdles. This is the reason why this is not PPI, is because it's not one and it's not direct. There are big pitfalls, dangerous places, and as HMRC are turning up the heat, we need to make sure people are aware of what does good look like. How do we continue train that? And platform. So platform is what I'm going to talk about for the next 5 or 10 minutes and just show you what it is. This is a free to use claims management release for smaller clients being where the likely qualifying expenditure is below 35k. So the benefit is less than 10k, which is the single largest area of growth in the R&D scheme. Larger claims, the volume of people claiming now above 10k is becoming relatively static. It's not the growing market that people talk about 3-4 years ago, but there is significant growth at the smaller end. So what we wanted to try and create was, for us, that's not, we are not going to really be able to make too much margin from those clients, but they're absolutely the ones that should help be a benefit from this scheme. So our commercial objective should not stop them getting what they deserve. So we've created this technology to allow accountants to go through a very, very simple plain English question set that doesn't ask about R&D, and I'll show you the questions in a second. And we've benchmarked that around what are the appropriate costs against the P&L. Based on those questions, we've built a few algorithms in the background, and that's a live moving database. So as we see more data come through from our own work, but from other sources, if it's HMRC, give the next level of data, we'll continually refine that to make sure those costs are appropriate. So what does it look like? There are a few steps. Think in your minds of buying insurance. This is probably the easiest comparison I can make. When if you think before the arrival of lots and lots of online compare the market type things, it's a bit of a pain. But think about this as a process of, how do I say, yeah, these are the things that I'm comfortable with as a client, and how do I then knock down these questions? And it flows through. So very quickly to run through platform. You hit here and you'll see what are your platform clients, who are the ones that you've controlled, gone through the process with, zero input from us, a third party, but you've been able to go in, press new claim and run through. You can see your open claims, but these haven't been submitted yet. and the completed ones, and that will continue to update. The first step in the process is a statement of facts. So this needs to be to the point. This is a solution appropriate for these size of clients. Based on our data analytics, this is the most likely, and there will be some variations, you know, probably 80% of the things will go through this no problem, but there'll always be things that it might be a ultra funky small farmer business who's just started up. Well, they might have 20 people and the salaries might there, but it might be 80% R&D. So there's a few caveats, but you need to sit there and go, right, we think that there's 1 in 20 is factual, wages and salaries on the P&L lower than 500k, and it's unlikely, to the point, unlikely 35. Back to the point around blueprint, we will provide more and more content to educate people to use this solution. And then I confirm that this business, these are the key things. This is designed for the SME scheme. This is designed to make sure there's no subsidization risks. Some of the red flags, regardless of size, the things that you really do need to get into the detail with, let's knock those out, because if we can knock those out, those red flags, this should work very well. Then there's a commitment from the accountant. This isn't a matter of just tick all the boxes, it's fine. You are standing in between this, and we are saying that reasonable inquiries have been made. There's evidence of the costs, and as the accountant, that's hopefully something that's already in your scope of what you see and what you do. Made them aware of the buyer's guidelines, and you can just email that as a link. That's a key thing that HMRC expect clients to know what they're claiming for and where it sits. And reasonable checks. Now, reasonable is lawyers will go on for hours about the term reasonable. Reasonable checks means that I didn't just find this new client, push them through here and whatever else. Reasonable checks effectively means that I ask the questions, I try and found some evidence of what it is, and that there is not a gut feel, but there's more than a gut feel that, yeah, this now is in scope of R&D to have a conversation. The numbers we don't know yet, but speaking to this client, I've made reasonable checks to think they're not just a shell UK company trying to get something. I've gone to the office, I know that they've just registered in London, or I've just done the company formation, those type of things. The first sets of questions are technical questions. There's not many of them. Start to finish, there's about 35 data points that you need to put in. So when thinking about the general sector, this is talking at sector level. When you think a pharmaceutical, as an industry, that's ultra R&D. Pharma is always going to be the top line. Minimal R&D sectors are things such as wholesalers, or a florist is always the example I use, barbers, one-man band taxi drivers, where there isn't a software thing they've come up with. So it's thinking about at that top level of the industry, are they in a space that's more likely to be doing R&D? The industry is aligned to HMRC's coding against R&D, and there's just a list. Just tell us which sector does your business work in, which of the following activities carry out. Again, there are only 5 options. Everything is tick box. There aren't free fields. Again, based on the algorithm that we've built, we need to have quantifiable stuff, and that also goes into the report. And it usually, from our experience, particularly at the smaller end, you can usually distill the reasons of what they're doing. Note, we've not asked, tell us about your R&D. One question that is a nightmare to ask to a client is, tell us about your R&D, because then you've got to try and define R&D, which is everyone struggles with that, not just at advisor level, but government and everybody else, academics, no one can agree on the phrase. Which of the following activities carry out? So, and then you get the feel of, actually, yes, we did change the manufacturing process for a reason. Yes, the software project was harder than we expected. You then move on to, are they challenging or not? That's a real key one. Regardless of what they're doing, was there an uncertainty? Uncertainty is one of the pillar tests that need to be satisfied. And then the second one is, was the solution easy? Now, there are a few parts in this that will have a significant impact on the end value. The challenging one is a key one, and also this one is as well, because effectively, if the solution is really easy to find, if I could go to Google, find someone saying, yep, we'll turn up, we'll get it done in an hour, no problem, you're not really satisfying the tests. And this also then sort of underlines that a little bit further. How much information is publicly available? Now, when you think publicly available, Google is a great tool, but is it a library? And, you know, none is literally, this is a new moonshot. We don't really know. A little could be, well, I can find some of the information, but it's to push it into my world and make it relevant to this to my situation is difficult. When you get to a lot of information, it's an indicator of where there's a lot of information and you can try and reverse engineer how this works in a relatively simplistic way, we might be struggling. But you answer these questions on behalf of your client as exactly as they tell you. And if all the questions align to, oh, this is really easy, there won't be a claim or very, very, very small amount of QE. But it depends how that moves around. So just by saying a lot on this question doesn't mean there's not a claim, but the software does that in the background. What were the uncertainties? Again, key one, and these are words that then pull through to the justification. And then what filled, and we've limited it down for the moment because again, most will sit within these brackets for these type of clients, for this size of clients, usually around engineering, manufacturing, and IT, very commonly now. If there's excess, does it create an advance? Another key, this is a key one. This again will have a significant material impact on if the claim's worthwhile doing or not. And I'll talk about that when we get to the end of what the process looks like. And then the second one is, how did you overcome them? Again, this helps then evidence what you do. That's all the technical questions. You complete that, and we have got, from those questions, we will have come up with a technical viewpoint of that client's qualifying activity. Then we ask about how much time. Of course, the proportion of cost usually is around the time and effort gone into it. So thinking about your overall working week, how much aligns to all the stuff we've just talked about? Not much, or all the time. This is what we kind of wake up and do. And the overarching focus of the business, is this incidental? Is it just something that happens every so often? Or again, is it something we do massively? Just to flick back. So this is around how much time a week do you need to dedicate to this, which could be, it's just always a pain. You know, we don't really care about pushing the envelope and being really, really funky in what we do. But every time we do it, it's really quite difficult. Good example, some levels of fabrication is a really good example of that. But then as an overall business, a fabrication business isn't constantly thinking about how do I make it quicker, faster, and better. They just want to fabricate in it aligned to client specification or whatever else. So the overall focus might be little, whereas a pharmaceutical company on drug discovery would be significant. The purpose of the business, what's the vision, purpose of the business, and how many people there against the employed staff are involved. Get it right first time. Again, that is it has an impact on how much we then allocate in costs. And do they use third parties again to get to the point of are subcontractors' costs going to be involved? This is also key based on the size of company, how they respond, how the background works to get to the numbers changes almost every time. To reverse engineer how you get to the numbers, you would need a small team of mathematicians to get there. But that's it. That gets you to the end of everything to do with R&D is now done. You've done the technical and you've done the time and effort questions. Then it's just general client information that should be at your fingertips. Same again. So there's the client information, there's the financial information, and then we're at the end. That you press those buttons, you can then review all the information, and then you submit. I was very conscious not to do a live demonstration because that's always a reason for software to break on you, but it isn't breaking at the moment, but I didn't want to jinx it. The output, you press that, it runs the calculations, and the user will get the report directly, the user, the accountant, you guys will get the report back into your inbox. And that report is a Word document that justifies a claim. There's a technical narrative, light touch technical narrative, but I know I'm biased, but it's miles ahead of where the competition are at the moment. And I'd encourage you all to go and have a look and tell me I'm wrong, because I'm very confident on what we've come up with. So it comes up, it then covers overline, what's the baseline compliance treatment of costs, and the summary of qualifying expenditure in that way. So it gives you the number. To get to that point, and all the way through, you generate the report, you can resend the report, is free of charge. Everything I've just walked through around Elevation is totally free of charge to use for our accounting partners. The reason why is because, one, we genuinely believe that we need to empower accountants to have the innovation conversation, and this is our investment in the integrity of the scheme. If we can stop some of the bad behaviour, because accountants feel like, I can have to Chris's point he made, if I can have the conversation before you get bombarded with emails and then get drawn in, because it's quite compelling, some of the messaging, the tactics, or he's trying to call me 18 times, I better answer the phone now. If we can arrest that situation and leave that to you, brilliant. It stops those bad practices happening. So, and we want to continue investing in this scheme. We want to continue to upskill the accountants. And if that makes us then operate only at a certain level of client, that is no problem for us at all, because there is plenty of stuff that we can be talking about to clients, R&D and intellectual property. And there'll be some clients that you go through with this that you might find a different level of information about them than what you knew before, that goes, actually, you guys should talk about your intellectual property and have you done patents or whatever else. And that's something, of course, we're very happy to work with. You might start having this conversation with a client and go, oh, this feels like this is outside of my scope. From Elevation, you can just ping that to us. Here's the company I'd like you to speak to, go and speak to them. You can then see how we followed it up, where they are, all of the stuff that's important for you guys to see if you are to then outsource it to a third party.
Couple of quick ones, Luke, if I can just cut in. Just to echo what you said there, and seeing the run through, and I've seen it before, but I think it's such a good platform. I really do. And one of the key differences there is that report, and that technical report as well that comes from it, is very different to a lot of off the shelf that is out there. A couple of questions have come through from Keith, if I can just drop them into you, Luke. Might be ones to follow up afterwards. First question is, how does it account for different employees spending different amounts of time on R&D?
Sure. So what we're looking at is the overall P&L. So when we look at how much you're saying these amount of people, the physical number, the X amount of salary costs, based on the answers you have, you're then getting it. What we're not doing is, for this level, and this is totally appropriate for under 35k QE, is not saying this person spent X amount of time, this person spent X amount of time. You're looking as an overall P&L based on the questions that you answer, how much of that employee costs are going to be qualifying.
Thanks, Luke. Keith, another question that's come through about a situation you had with another provider. That might be one to follow up with Luke or one of the team off the webinar. One of the things we are going to look at now is engaging with us and with GovGrant and how we engage with accountants. But I'd be really interested just to run another quick poll just to see what the barriers you have with your clients when you're trying to engage your clients around R&D. It'd be really interesting just to see how you feel about that. Thanks very much for taking a quick look at that. That's quite interesting results we've got there. 60% is difficult to know what actually qualifies. I think that's one of the key areas, Luke, where we do try and help out, and I'm sure you'll touch on now as well.
Yeah, and it's time and time again we hear clients and accountants say, but what actually qualifies? And there will be a few things going on to the blueprint area of platform that will give accountants almost a let's get some filter even before you think, oh, I can make a claim for them, either a full, if you like, the full service, or whether it's through platform, to give people the sort of questions, the indicators, the gut feel. What are the 3 or 4 or 5 questions that I can ask to say, is this client right for a conversation? Even before making a claim, are they right for a conversation? And what we try and do on this, we'll demonstrate on this circle, is all the ways in which us and PFP can support accountants in this process, qualifying the potential claim. For example, sometimes the client accountants say to us, look, here's my client list, and these 10, 20, 30, whatever the number is, I think, based on what I know of them, based on their websites, probably could be doing something. Can you give me your view? And there, you know, we might look at the website, we might look at their accounts, whatever public information we can to say, oh, no, definitely not. But the point of Blueprint in particular on the platform, on Elevation, is to start upskilling what those conversations look like, because they're the things that every professional advisor, every accountant, tax advisor should be able to have a view on. And then the key thing for us is, and we really do mean this, is our promises that we make to our partners. When you partner with us, you know, the filing, we can do the filings, the amended tax comps, that's no problem at all. But if it's something that is part of what you do, no problem at all. We will not try and, we're not looking to poach that business, if you like. That's not what we're here to do. We're here for R&D and IP, and that is it. We're really not concerned about the other bits and bobs that could float around the sides. Profitability, you know, some accountants will want to understand what revenues are being generated from this. This does take time, you know, even if you're just passing it as a lead or trying to qualify it, say, look, you should have a conversation with these guys. There is an element of work needed, and we do think our partners should be remunerated for that. So what we do is those direct referrals, there's a level of introducer fee, but also for our partners, if we in our normal marketing and efforts and we get to see those clients and not through you, if we then pick up that client, we'll also pay you a smaller level of intro fee for that partner that we find, that client we find elsewhere. Lockout's quite important. You know, some partners, accounting partners, will say, look, I really want to work with you guys, but these are my top clients, and if you ruin these relationships, if you're doing something, I will not be happy. That will be a big problem for me. So we have open conversations to say, look, tell us who they are, and we will pull away from any of our direct marketing efforts if it's appropriate and we're at the level that we can do it, to say, look, okay, let's have a joint conversation. Let's go in together to try and help this client out, versus them having this bombardment from the market. I've talked about marketing and free health checks. You may have done a claim for a client, and it was you were very comfortable with where the tech was, the competent professional was great. Something may have happened down that track, and you might go, oh, really not sure about that one. I need a second pair of eyes. And we're very happy to do free health checks on current claims for clients. It might be a new client you pick up, and they said they've done a claim with someone, and you don't really know if it's good, bad, or indifferent. And you, as part of your new client onboarding, you may want to see, is that risk to us? Is that opportunity for us? Is the client need to do something quick sooner rather than later? So we're very happy to do that. So thank you everyone so much for listening. We're really excited about Elevation, because for everything I talked about, it really is, I know I say it over and over again, but it really is our investment into the integrity of into the market, into the scheme. It's important that accountants really trust R&D providers, and quite frankly, we do not want to be tarnished with the same brush as some of the poor practices out there. So if we can empower you guys, well, this is you are the people that we want to absolutely stand behind for clients, because you're the most useful advisor to them. But thank you, Chris, for having me.
No, Luke, thank you so much for coming on this morning. I think that's a really good overview of a fantastic solution that's out there. You know, at PFP, we work with thousands of accountants across the UK, and as far as we're concerned, we quite simply will only work with the best of the best. And Luke and the team at GovGrant have been fantastic with everyone that they work with PFP. One of the things that has been massively popular is looking at that health check, looking at that review. If you think something's been spurious, or you weren't happy with it, or just having a look to see if you are maximising the potential of that claim for your client, to make sure, you know, they're due every penny they're owed. We're just going to finish with one last quick poll for everybody, just to see if any of you would be interested in having a chat, learning more about the Elevation platform, more about PFP and GovGrant. I'm more than happy to arrange that for you, or if not at all, that's great. So hopefully you found it useful. So just let this poll run, and as I said, if anybody wants any contact, anything at all, we will send some of the slides around afterwards for you. And again, any questions, anything that anybody wants to chat about, R&D related, intellectual property, patent box, those are separate conversations again, then please to get in touch. So thank you very much for all those that answered. Thank you for doing the polls. Thank you all for attending today. Luke, thank you very much once again, and hope everyone has a good day. and speak to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Luke.